We're going to talk to you today about unleashing your creativity. He's going to talk to you about his proven tactics for crafting and compelling portraits of people. Kanayo Adibe, would you come up to the stage? Ladies and gentlemen, let's get this next program going.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys hear me okay? Thank you. So, my name is Kanayo Adibe. I'm a DC-based wedding photographer. I also do commercial work. So today I'm going to be talking to you about my proven tactics for crafting compelling portraiture. So I was born in DC. I grew up in Nigeria, did all of my schooling up until high school, and came to the United States in 2002. I started my journey as a photographer in 2014, and my first camera was a D5100. My wife purchased the camera for me for Christmas, and I think we all know that's how many photographers start off, with the Christmas present. And I took to the streets to kind of learn how to use my DSLR. Prior to that, I used to take pictures on my phone, and they were all just fun pictures, but I wanted to really learn how to use the camera and see if this whole professional thing was the thing for me. So I took to the streets, and the streets are always posing, there are always people available, so I used that as a way to learn how to shoot in manual mode and really honing my skills as a photographer. And as a result, I started doing a whole bunch of street photography. And it wasn't till a friend of mine had a birthday party, and I decided to take my camera with me and play around with that I photographed her party. I posted it on Instagram. I got a few requests for party work, and I did that. And after the next client I did his party. He came back to me. He's like, "I love your photos so much. I want you to shoot my wedding." And I'm talking about a few months into learning how to use my camera. So I did his wedding about a year later. Posted that. It got published, and all hell broke loose. From that point on, I was a wedding photographer. So over the years, I've kind of figured out, I consider myself a creative portraiture wedding photographer. I do documentary work. I'm a documentary wedding photographer, but with an emphasis on creative portraits. It's kind of how I like to differentiate myself from the competition. So one of the tactics that I like to use is light. So, seeing how I'm based in the DMV, we don't really have a lot of beautiful scenery. We have nice architecture, but we're in the city, in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. It's a lot of cities, there's a lot of buildings, there's a lot of, sometimes it's like, it's not picturesque, like, I don't have mountains and beautiful backdrops, so you have to kind of dig deep to find ways to create compelling, non-distracting images. So I like to use light. One of my preference is Lowkey Lighting. And what Lowkey Lighting is really just lighting with a huge emphasis on shadows. I like to place my subjects in really bright light and expose for them, so I bring down all the rest of the ambient light and literally hide the environment. And a lot of times, this is a starting point for some other techniques that I use later on, and which I'll talk about. So when I do Lowkey lighting, I really try to emphasize emotion, gestures, because you don't have the scenic backdrop anymore. It's really almost like a studio photo. So the engagement between the subjects needs to be like paramount in those kind of situations. Another way I like to use Lowkey lighting is something like this, where I try to use it to create something interesting. This image, the image before was created in an alley in DC, where I just had enough light peeking through. This one's actually created at the Lincoln Memorial. But I was able to find a shaded area with a tree and just enough lights peeking in where I could place my subjects in the spots to allow me to create something like this. The next thing I'd use is high-key lighting. I usually use this type of lighting to create a message, to push a message of purity, of some angelic feel. So the way this is created is through backlighting. You backlight your subject here using window light and expose so all the shadows are gone. So you expose for optimal exposure and blow out the background completely. And this just allows for a really angelic, pure feel to come through in the imagery. Another thing I like to do is silhouettes. I actually created this image last year on stage at the Nikon shootout. It was a demo of techniques. And the thing with creating good silhouettes, you want to start with, you want the image to be able to be read properly by your viewers. Focus on creating gestures and emotion, and that way you can tell stories with your silhouettes. It's also another starting point for some other technique that I actually use, so I'm going to also talk about that soon. So once you've gotten used to making silhouettes, you can actually use it creatively and create images like this, where you tell a story with a silhouette. So you have a kind of unique looking image without being too obvious. You know, there's a lot of times you shoot in the same place a lot, and you know, when you do one thing for one client, you want to find a way to do something else for another client using the same location. So I try to play with light, play with shapes, play with silhouettes to create unique images in the exact same spot I've done something for somebody else, but also be able to tell the story. You know, here I don't need to tell you it's a maternity session, but it's a creative way of depicting a maternity session with the groom, the father and the mother in the photo. So this method, using refractive objects to create visual artifacts. So anyone familiar with prisming, where you take a glass, reflective glass device and put it in front of your lens to reflect light into the camera, into the sensor, and create these interesting artifacts to add a little bit of pizzazz or excitement to the image that under normal circumstances wouldn't be there. So in this particular image, I use something called a fractal filter. It's been sold online, and it reflects the light in interesting ways and bends whatever ambient light you have in the room to just add a little bit more interesting stuff to your image. Here's a similar example. Here I'm using a totally different glass object, but I'm doing this during a documentary, while documenting the first dance. And that's a legitimate first dance, the dad dancing with, father-daughter dance, the dad dancing with his daughter, and I'm just taking multiple frames, moving the glass object around, reflecting off the different light sources in the room, creating something to just add a little bit extra to the image. In this one, I'm using a mirrored reflection. A lot of times when I show this image, I like to ask people how they think it was made. And most people think they're looking at a structure that naturally exists in its normal form. And I like to let people know that no, this is not how it naturally exists. This is actually a reflection of the top part of the frame on the bottom using my phone. So you put your phone underneath your lens and try to align the top parts that's reflected on the bottom of your phone to create interesting shapes. And shapes are one of the things I look for when I shoot. So if I see a shape, I automatically are drawn to it. And sometimes if I'm able to complete the shape to make something even more interesting, I bring out my phone to try to create a reflection. And there are other ways you can use this too. Like some other interesting ways is doing something like this. I'm sure we've seen a lot of pictures where people have people in the sky, and you often wonder how did they get that done? Like how, like for me, I take pride in creating in-camera artistry where there's no Photoshop involved, but like imagine taking a photo like this and showing this to your client right there, and they're wondering, how did you do that? Like we're not standing in the clouds. Like how did you take that, execute that? So that's part of the fun for me, is being able to create these unique photos in camera without any need for photo editing after the fact. So in this case, we were at a vineyard, and we had there's a little bit of a hill. So because there's that hill, there was nothing behind the clients. All I had was sky. So I had them go as high up as they could go. And once they were as high up as I needed, I actually went down and shot higher. So I had very little horizon. The horizon was literally the ground they were standing on. And then I took my phone again, put it underneath my lens, and reflected the top part of the image on the bottom. And because there are clouds, the clouds were actually able to cover their feet to make it look like they were standing in the clouds. That little reflection. So this is a fully the only editing in this image is color correction. And there's no, no Photoshop, nothing, no funny business going on. It's all done in camera. So the next thing I like to do is, a lot of my work is inspired by the environment. So while we do not have the most beautiful backdrops in the DC, Maryland area, I like to find interesting things in our space. So I like to work with textures from the buildings we have. I like to work with colors, and when I find an interesting looking space, I focus heavily on photographing that space so it's a standalone interesting image. And then I find a beautiful place to plug the subjects in where there are no distractions. And that way it's a nice read from foreground to background and just makes for a stronger photograph. So really exploring environmental portraits is a great tactic to improve the overall appeal of your photograph. Another example of that, if those clients were not in the frame, it'll still be a nice picture of the background. But once you initially establish that initial frame, make a strong image, you now find areas to plug your subjects in. In this case, I plugged the groom right in the arch, which makes him really stand out. Then I placed the bride in an area where she's not happy. There are no distractions. It's a clean part of the frame, and it just makes for a really strong image. What happened? Okay, sorry. All right, so multiple exposures. This is one of my favorite techniques because I think it's one of the bounds of the kind of images you can create are unlimited. Once you understand the concept of being able to merge two images together, one image with so the way it works is essentially the highlights of one image are overwritten in the shadows of the other. And if you take that concept, it basically makes the kind of images you can make unlimited. And it's one of the best ways to create unique, authentic images to you. So the story behind this image was, I was in a photo gallery with my clients, and it's really busy. There are a lot of pictures on the walls. I was looking for a way to create something unique for them, distraction-free, an image that I consider artistic and creative per my style. And I identified this painting on the wall. It's an actual painting in the gallery. So I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be nice if I could actually take my clients and put them in that photo, as something unique? And I was like, okay, you know what? I will try that. So I started off by photographing the picture that was actually on the wall, and then I created a low-key image using the video light on my clients, exposing for the highlights in the frame and killing all the lights in the background. So I had that low-key image with enough black to be able to transport the highlights in this one into the other. And as a result, I was able to create this image. And it's something unique to them. It's a one of one, an image I've never made before. And if I was to go back to that same gallery, I'd also be able to create something different for the next client. So it just allows me to create these special, unique, artistic feeling images for my clients. And while I was there, I did a different one. What's better than one? Two. So I did a second one, and this was done using the available lights in the room. I found an interesting light source. I expose for the highlights. I put my lens out of focus so I could create bokeh balls. Framed it in a way where I knew there would be no interference with where the faces of the subjects are going to be. And when those two images were merged in camera, they created that image. So here I have created two different feeling images using one source image and two separate, images for effect. Another tool I like to use is the 45mm tilt shift lens. And I use this as primarily an architectural lens that I like to use for portraiture, simply for the aesthetics of the lens, what I can achieve with the lens. So in this case, if you examine this photo, you can tell the unique attribute about it is only the faces are in focus. And this was done by using a manual focus lens, bending my focus because the tilt shift lens can actually adjust up and down. So as we know, the focal plane is flat, and as you focus moves back to forth. But with a tilt shift lens, when you bend that lens up or down, the focal plane is at a diagonal, and as you focus, it travels diagonally and intersects. So what you see here is the intersection of focus for the foreground and in the background, and everything else that's not in that intersection is out of focus. And I do this primarily because it looks interesting. We all love soft focus when you shoot a lens at 1.4. We love those beautiful bokeh. So with the tilt shift lens, you can actually do interesting stuff, get nice focus fall off at multiple levels. So I use this for the aesthetics. I like the way it looks. It feels unique. Compared to the next photographer, it'll be a different image. I might be that deciding factor when someone compares my work to 3 other photographers in my market. They're like, he does things that's slightly different from everyone. I think I'm going to go with him. And primarily, that's how I get my clientele, is based off the differences they see in my work from the next person. Here's another application of that. This part focuses diagonal. So with the tilt shift lens, not only can you tilt it up and down, you can also spin it around. So you could do this and turn it around. So in this case, focus is actually moving front to back, but also diagonal. And the cool thing about this is it creates this miniature effect. She actually looks significantly smaller than him. Like, she looks like she's standing next to him and smaller, but in reality, she's actually further back. And it's just a fun way to play with images and make something different. So last but not least, this is one of my favorite things, and it was a real eye-opener for me. When I started off my journey as a photographer, I used to think that lenses, focal lengths, were really all about distance. Distance like, oh, I want to reach far, so I get a long lens, or I want to get a lot in the scene, so I use a wide angle lens. But what I realized is the power of lenses are in, the power of a wide angle lens is in its distortions. I consider lenses to be paintbrushes, and it means to achieve something when taking an image versus it means to just have more in the photo. So we all know that wide angle lenses have distortions. I see that as the power of a wide angle lens, if used correctly. So this image was taken with more of like a 35-50mm lens. So this is an actual representation of what this space looks like. This is what you will see if you are looking at it with your naked eye, all right? So what I want to point out is that little opening over there. So in the next image I'm going to show a couple posed in that opening with this shrubbery, but I decided that I was going to use my 20mm lens and the power of the distortion of the 20mm lens to create something that isn't exactly what is there. So I'm able to take minimal shrubbery and stretch it into something that looks totally different. Because the lens stretches reality, blows things out of proportion, and I'm able to like creatively use that strength that most people might shy away from to do something different and create something versus capture what's there. And the lesson I learned from here was so pivotal for me. I started to apply it in every other scenario I could find to really create images that are, you know, versus capture and be too literal with what's there. Second one, the object to watch for is the little tunnel on the side. So this is what the tunnel actually looks like. This was taken with a 50. This is the literal representation of what's there. But when I take the same 20mm lens and apply it in the same way, I'm able to create something a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more compelling. And that's what's created there. More dramatic. And what happens is, if another photographer photographed this place with a more literal lens, when a client sees this and sees theirs, they're going to understand that there's something else happening here, right? It's going to be a little bit more appealing, a little bit more dramatic, and that might make the difference between you pulling a more artistic client who is more interested in the art of photography, you know, if that's the demographic that you're interested in. So here's another one, and this is the last one. Light painting. So for me, the fun of light painting is seeing the faces of the people around when I'm making these photos. So the way this works is, the first thing you need is a video light. You get a video light, you get clients who aren't drunk, and, you get clients who aren't drunk, and you get a tripod for your camera. And the last thing is a pixel stick, or you can still use the same video light, but I use the pixel stick in this image. And what happens is you set your exposure for the optimal exposure you want. You get low ISO, ISO 100 or 64 if your camera has it. You go the smallest aperture on your lens, and I use my 20mm lens because the wide angle lenses show less camera shake. So 20mm at f16, and my shutter speed is 30 seconds. 30 seconds because I want enough time to do everything I need to do before the shutter closes. So you start off with the camera focused on the clients, video light in hand, pixel stick on the floor. Push your shutter, preferably with a timer, so you don't have camera shake at the time of pushing it. So a 2-second timer, boom, 1, 2, camera shutter opens up. You pick up your video light, get close, turn it on, paint on the subjects, light them one time, boom, turn that off. Run back behind your camera, pick up your pixel stick, turn that on, run to the side of the frame, do all the acrobatics, spin it around, run through behind them, off the frame, turn that off, wait. When it's done, if the gods are on your side, this is what it will look like. If they're not on your side, good luck. So, one of my favorite photos, because wedding guests look at me and like, what is he doing? Then when I get to show them the final picture, it sells itself. Everybody's super amazed by the results. And that's why I love doing them. But I usually reserve them to the end of the day. It's the last photo I make on a wedding. So right now, I have a slideshow that kind of shows the progression of images that I've made using these techniques. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Traffic lights red while I'm trying to get back to you. You there. nothing compares to you. All those thoughts in my head, the worries I fear. My mind will say, let go. I want loving instead. Wait on the bed, baby, I'll be there in two. All those thoughts in my head, the worries I fear. My mind will say, let go. I want loving instead. Wait on the bed, baby, I'll be there in two. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. Hold on and don't let go. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. Hold on and don't let go. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. Hold on and don't let go. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. Hold on and don't let go. Hard to compare another woman to you. It's not fair. I just wanna be there with you. All the stuff in my head pulling me back. I just wanna dance with you. Girl, you're stuck in my head. Love when you bend. Love feeling so brand new. All the stuff in my head pulling me back. I just wanna dance with you. Girl, you're stuck in my head. Love when you bend. Love feeling so brand new. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey.